Hello, and welcome to the 300th episode of the LiberatED Podcast. I'm Kerry McDonald, and I honestly can't believe we've reached this milestone together. 300 episodes. That's hundreds of conversations, stories, and insights centered around one core mission: reimagining education and helping families, educators, and innovators discover what's possible beyond the conventional classroom. When I started this podcast in February of 2022, I wanted to amplify the voices of the founders who are challenging the schooling status quo by building sought-after solutions. These entrepreneurial parents and teachers are bold thinkers and doers who are creating fresh, learner-centered models that put kids' and families' needs first. Over these past episodes, we've highlighted the rise of low-cost private schools, microschools, learning pods, homeschooling collaboratives, and virtual learning platforms, especially in the wake of the pandemic. We've explored policy shifts that are expanding education choice, unleashing innovation, and making new schools and spaces more accessible than ever. And most importantly, we've shared stories of freedom, transformation, and joy in learning. Every guest, every listener, and every episode has played a role in building this vibrant community of education visionaries and change makers. And I'm so grateful to all of you. But we're not stopping here. As we begin season 4 of the podcast, I'm thrilled to share that much of what's coming will tie into my forthcoming book, Joyful Learning: How to Find Freedom, Happiness, and Success Beyond Conventional Schooling, which is being published this summer by the large New York City publisher Hachette, and which is now available for pre-order wherever books are sold. I'll put the pre-order link in today's show notes. This book is a deeply personal project. It's filled with stories from the families and educators I've met through the LiberatED podcast and beyond. People who've dared to step outside the traditional system to craft something more meaningful, more liberating, and yes, more joyful. So, what can you expect from the next season of LiberatED? Well, more stories of the education entrepreneurs building new learning models and the lessons they have learned along the way. You may recall that when this podcast started, it began as a once a week show. And within 6 months, I had such a backlog of founder stories that I boosted the podcast to twice weekly, where it's been ever since. And I still have a backlog of amazing stories of new founders who are creating inspiring educational spaces. So there's much more to come, many more stories to share. This new podcast season will also feature updates from the families and founders featured in Joyful Learning. It will share their experiences seeking or building new schools and spaces and updates since I first interviewed or visited them. The new season will also offer more practical insights for parents, teachers, and policymakers who want to build a freer, happier future of education. You know, this podcast has always been about lifting up the stories of entrepreneurial parents and teachers who are transforming U.S. education from the bottom up. So thank you for being part of this journey. Whether you've listened to one episode or to all 300, you are helping to build an educational movement rooted in freedom, curiosity, and human flourishing. Here's to the next 300 episodes and a future filled with joyful learning. And if you would like to be more connected to our podcast guests and episodes, please join our private Facebook group, LiberatED Podcast Community. I'll put that link in the show notes as well and hope to see you there. Thanks again for listening and sharing.